I'm going to talk about the 20 years of U.S. battle in Afghanistan, and the horrible, horrible ending chapter of this story. I have a few uh, dictated notes that I'm going to try to refer to these. They have a lot of misspellings because they're dictated. And we're going to go through them if I can. What has happened in the past few weeks has been nothing short of a disaster for humanity, I think, because it's not just a disaster for the Western powers or Afghanistan, but I think it's a really a defeat for humanism and human rationality. What we saw happening in Afghanistan is the defeat of people who think they are rational by people who are obviously being irrational and superstitious. But the sad thing is that once you delve into the story a little bit, you realize that this terrible last chapter was practically a disastrous ending to a pretty disastrous 20 years of attempts at managing things outside America in a far distant country, military mismanagement, as well as political mismanagement, and a lot of push and shove that different presidents attempted in different directions, canceling each other, and bottom line, creating a hierarchy of mismanagement all the way down. What we see, I feel, was a hierarchy of mismanagement from the top of the U.S. government all the way down to the military soldiers, all the way through the ranks of the Afghan government, Afghan military, all the way down. What we see is a failure of management, and it shows that in this day and age, where we think we're connected, we think we have all of these different means of communication and technology, that there's still a lot to be communicated. There's a lot that gets lost in the communication and especially in translation, and that within the American government, within the American military, and within the Afghan system, government and military, there has been so much miscommunication and so much mismanagement that I feel like what we see is the fall of humanism, is the fall of rationality, it's the fall of intelligence, really. It's a bad day for human intelligence because if you think about humanism, in order to have such a concept as humanism, you need to have human intelligence. And ask yourself, what is humanism? What is humanism? And who is the guardian of humanism in this day and age? Can politicians be humanistic? I define humanism to be using human intelligence, using human superior intelligence to avoid mistakes that animals make. If you're making all the same silly mistakes that animals make, you're not much better than animals. Humanism is not to have to tear other human beings, not to have to kill them for no reason, just for fun, as many animals do, not to have to kill another human baby because you want to have sex with their mother, which is what bears do. A lot of male bears, with their massive power, they go after little baby bears to kill them just to have sex with the mother. A lot of horrible orcas who kill other whale babies, just for fun, and they don't even eat them. Humanism means let us be more intelligent, Let us put intelligence to some use. And it's funny, these Muslims who are going on and on about Islam and Sharia, if you download the book of Quran and you look up the word thinking, think or thinking or reckoning, it comes up quite a few times. And it's usually in this sort of sentence: are they not thinking? Are you not thinking? Are you not using your head? That expression comes up in Quran like many, many times. I want to say like over 50 times. But what we see in Afghanistan is mismanagement, bombing your own soldiers, bombing the Afghans, bombing Afghan. This Karzai, the first president, was almost killed in one of the initial bombings in Afghanistan. According to this book by Anand Gopal, Anand Gopal has written this book, No Good Men Among the Living. I read halfway through this book. It has rave reviews on Amazon. Somebody suggested it. I read through it, and at some point I gave up because I wasn't sure I could believe everything I'm reading because uh, knowing Persians and Afghans, it's very difficult to interview one Afghan and try to get details about something that happened yesterday. You would really have to spend a lot of questions and answers to get a complete story of one point of view, let alone so many stories that are covered in this book. And this book almost makes RT News. I don't know if you know about Russia Today. RT News is a propaganda channel. You can see it on YouTube. It's a propaganda channel for Putin, basically. And it's a channel where everything America ever does is bad. Everything they do is a mistake. Everything is bad. This book, if it's, I don't know if I can trust all this stuff. Read the reviews on Amazon. Uh, but I just have difficulty imagining that so much detail about so many stories could be documented and in a black and white absolute truth kind of a manner. Uh, but you read this, and according to this book, more than half of the bombings they've done in the past 20 years in Afghanistan, well, this book practically is mentioning one after another all the bombings, all the killings, all the raids in the villages and so forth. It seems like they were over and over killing innocent people, killing the wrong people while the bad people were running away. All the innocent people were sent to Guantanamo Bay or they were radicalized because they were tortured there. And it's beyond what RT News would show you. You know, if it makes RT News look cuddly. I'm gonna page through some of the pages so you can pause and read some of the stuff. But yeah, this book makes our teens look cuddly. Um, for example, I saw a clip on RT News talking about how some of the big heads of the Taliban right now are people who used to be in Guantanamo Bay, and they were released on such and such orders, and they were concluding that maybe these types were radicalized there, or maybe they didn't figure out that these guys are serious, heavy duty pawns, role players. And but in this book, it makes it sound like every innocent person was jailed. There was so many horrible things that the Russians did, so many atrocities. Then there was the civil war in the 90s, and then there was the Taliban. There was a lot of atrocities that happened in the 90s. And then when the Americans came in 2001, there were a lot of atrocities that were different. I don't know if I can say they were worse than the Russians, probably not. But according to this book, it was even, in certain ways, it was worse than what Russians or the Taliban did. For example, they would raid the Americans, and these translators, that's why the Taliban hate these translators, because the translator is accompanying a group of Americans who are raiding a village, grabbing innocent men, getting inside their homes, something that the Taliban never did, enter somebody's home where the women's are, because like the women are, because that is like a sacred sanctuary in Islam, I guess, and something that even the Russians didn't do. So it was like the first time that people had their home raided, everyone in the village, and all the women dragged out and all the men dragged out and so forth, and people getting shot or being trucked away, their beards shaven in front of everyone and dragged away and so forth was when Americans were doing it. And a lot of times it was based on wrong intelligence, again, according to this book. But you can see this article in the Time magazine too. And there was tons of friendly fire. I was looking up on Wikipedia. It says between 2 to 20% of all total casualties in all wars in the past century have been friendly fire. And even though the numbers have gone down, it's still, there's still room, there's still a lot that does happen in a day-to-day basis. So, so the only time, according to this book, that the homes of every home of every villager in a village were raided, and not just one village, over and over. And that's why these translators that accompanied these Americans are seen as traitors and assholes, because you are helping a group of people who are obviously doing the wrong thing. Uh, they are assaulting and attacking, a lot of times, not every time, but a lot of times, the wrong people. And you guys, for a job, to have a living, you're accompanying them. But according to this book, the situation got to a point that you had to be, uh, the American mismanagement created the kind of environment that you had to be that kind of person to survive. You could not be an honest, normal person and think that you're going to survive. You had to constantly go around. The people who make the most amount of money were the people who were constantly playing with Americans and giving them the wrong information and renting them, leasing chunks of land that they didn't own as a base to Americans, making tons of money, and all kinds of other scams that they did on Americans. So if Biden, the idiot, the heartless idiot, backed out of Afghanistan, it's really because he was ending 20 years of mismanagement. And Americans on every level, the military and so forth, they really realize that they're goofing up a lot. I don't want to say I believe everything in this book, but I would not be shocked. I was looking up the other day for a leftist. I was looking for a leftist publication in Sweden, an Iranian publication that sometimes has informative books. I'm not a leftist myself at all, but I like some of their publications. And Baha'is in Persia, they sometimes can have good books on feminism and other topics. But and then by chance I ran into another Baron publication. There's this Baron publication, and then there's this Baron publication. It's some kind of publication in Afghanistan, and practically everything they have is like books for kids and other stuff, but everything, it has some kind of religious tone to it. Oh, the gracious God, God that did this. Prayers, Islamic prayers, and hadith, the sayings of the Prophet. Fasting, Islamic fasting according to the hadith. The life of the Prophet. It's kind of like the Christian brainwash books that I find sometimes in poor stores, discount stores in LA sometimes. In Los Angeles, I'm amazed they have Bible stories for children, blah blah stories, like all kinds of brainwash and so forth. And it's just so sad. It's like A population that's only now becoming more literate, they have to be bombarded with garbage books on superstitious nonsense. Uh, Friendly fire. It's very interesting to look up friendly fire in general and friendly. There's a list of friendly fires all over the world. It's amazing to read this, and it's really interesting to read it in Afghanistan because there's a lot of stuff there too. And it's very interesting because you often think about the uncontacted people, that there are quite a few tribes still all around the world that are uncontacted. And the behavior that the Islamic mullahs in Iran and the Taliban show a lot of times is very similar to uncontacted people because the first thing they do is they want you away, get out of this land. They want to shoot you, they want to kill you, they want to do things to you. And in a way, you could say that that is considering how they have very little immunity, health immunity to all the modern diseases. Yes, they would be wiped out just like the Native Americans in America did. So maybe they are smart to keep distance, keep yourself away, shoot at anyone who wants to come to your territory. And in a way, the behavior we see from the Islamists is that over and over they think that they can unite around the Sharia or around what Prophet Muhammad said or what the Quran said. But the book of Quran is such an ambiguous mishmash of broken sentences and broken stories that are copied from the Bible, and it's so inconsistent. It has so many historical errors, logical errors, consistency errors. It talks about the inheritance for children in two or three different places, and they're contradicting each other. And in one place, the way you share your inheritance among your kids adds up to more than 100%. It's like they didn't check their math. So it's interesting that the Sunnis and the Shiites over and over talk about the glory of Sharia or the glory of Islam, that we're gonna just, as if it's a known and settled matter, and we know what the Sharia law is, and we can all gather around it, except it's really not settled. It's really ambiguous. A lot of it is made up, and uh, and the book of Quran itself is extremely ambiguous. In fact, do they? Can we find anything like this? We can look for ambiguities versus. It's very interesting. There's a verse in Quran. It starts by ALM, Alif Lam Mim, and then it says Hadha al Kitab al Mubin. This is a very clear and obvious book. Over and over, the Quran repeats that this is a very clear book. It's really written in clear words for everyone to understand. The total vocabulary used in the Quran is only 2,000 words, which is really something on par with the peasant, but a peasant's knowledge of, any language, really. A lot of ESL books that are made in America or in Britain, they limit them to 4,000 words vocabulary, 4,000 word vocabulary. And the Quran is only 2,000 words. It's a very limited peasant level kind of a book. And yet, in the total is about 6,600 verses, but a lot of the stories are repeated. The story of Moses is repeated three times, very broken, very haphazard. The story of Joseph is repeated three times, again, very broken. You have to put it together, and you still don't get a complete picture of the story. It's as if they just copied and pasted the same stories over and over and just filled up the six. You would think a book that is so that Muslims treat as the ultimate guide to guidance and law and everything. You would think if it's only 6,000 verses, 6,000 sentences, and it's limited to 2,000 words. It's like such a limited vocabulary. You would think they would really focus on what is important to say. And no, they have to tell the story of Moses 3 times, Joseph 3 times. The story of Abraham and Isaac is reduced to 4 sentences. They don't even mention the name of the kid. 4 sentences. And yet, so that other verse that says ALM, Alif Lam Mim Hadal Kitab al Mubin, ALM, some of the chapters in Quran start with some letters, ambiguous letters. No one knows what those letters ALM stand for. It's probably the people, the initials of some kind of signal of the authors, whoever was writing, or the scribes who were writing down that chapter. They were just putting it that I'm doing this one. But it's stuck in there, and no one knows what they mean. And then right after it says, Hadar Kitab al Mubin. This is a very clear book. In fact, in ancient manuscripts in cuneiform and hieroglyphs, a lot of times the scribes would add little comments or little side things for the other scribe to read. Like if they were sending a letter this way or that way on papyrus or on cuneiform, they would sign their own name or add a little bit of, oh, how you doing in the letter, by the way. They would have little communications between the different scribes. So as the letters went back and forth between the rulers, the scribes who kind of got to know, like telegraph people, they would get to know each other and they would have little communications, side communications. How are the children doing? And yet the Quran has all these little letters that no one understands what they mean. These are all Islamic websites, so you don't really get to get much. And of course, you can find the same. Um, you can find the same, more inconsistencies, in Bible and the Old Testament and so forth. So these Taliban types, they act like it's a clear cut. We know what the Sharia is. It's a settled law. It's not a settled law. Look at Roe versus Wade now. That's now it's treated like it's not a settled law. How ridiculous is that? But mismanagement is such a common thing in America. I don't know if America was always mismanaged or is it a new thing. Um, Let me see if I can find this thing that I sent to a friend of mine. The U.S. government, the State Department used to have, or still has, a Facebook page and a Twitter page um, in Farsi. And for many years, for the past 10 years, they were calling it, USA Inside Farsi. It was translated into Farsi. It says USA Dar Farsi. And they would always laugh and say, oh my God, they just got some ESL person who doesn't have a command of the Persian language to name and put all these posts, except that it's like they translated word by word what uh, USA in Farsi. They just translated word by word, and they didn't understand it. In Farsi, you're saying USA inside Farsi, inside Persian. Just doesn't make sense. They recently, just a few months ago, they changed that. It just goes, or you look up the story of Reality Winner and so forth. They had to train Americans to learn Persian, to eavesdrop on Afghans and Persians and so forth, because probably they don't trust an Iranian national or an Afghan national. They want some white dude, blonde hair, that they can trust. They think that guy I'm going to trust. So let's teach them Persian from scratch, even though there's millions of Iranians in America. So they would train these people, and then they could not, if the US government, the State Department could not translate or put a correct translation of USA in Farsi for their Facebook page for 10 years, and they finally corrected it. Or I saw this other post by the office of actually it says the Prime Minister of Israel in Farsi. The Prime Minister of Israel from the time of Netanyahu has had posts in Farsi. For a few years, starting a few years ago, they started having posts in Farsi. And a lot of times they wanted to communicate with Persians and say that we care about you and your government is terrible. Okay, I understand that. But the problem was that a lot of times they would say bizarre things. Netanyahu would say bizarre things. It was as if whoever translated, oh, you know what? I have it here on WhatsApp, but I cannot. Oh, yeah, here. Um, it's as if it's like they didn't really, uh, they didn't um, consult somebody who speaks Farsi clearly. They say, hey, is this how you say such and such? Oh, here it is. This is the office of the Prime Minister of Israel. And it's as if they hired someone who's just word by word translating what the Prime Minister of Israel has tweeted to the American people or to the office of the U.S. president, and they just translate without thinking. Okay, well, a lot of the people that are your target audience in this account, I mean, they read Farsi, so they could be Persians, they could be Afghans. It says from on behalf of all the people of Israel, I give my condolences. I express my condolences and my deepest blah blah for the death of American citizens in Kabul because of the bombing that happened that killed 13 people. In this horrible, tough times, Israel is on the side of America, and just as America has always been on the side of Israel, our thought and our prayers are with American citizens. It's like, well, what about the Afghans that got killed? If you're posting this thing in Farsi, there's chances that a lot of Afghans and a lot of Persians are seeing this. Maybe to kind of have a sense of humanism, you should mention that too, or you should tell the prime minister, okay, can I add that one bit too about the Afghans that got killed? It sounds so selfish and so, and of course, it basically triggered all kinds of comments, negative comments, and so forth. And we all heard about the some Ministry of Communications in Afghanistan that ended up in, I think, Leipzig, was it, delivering pizzas, and some news agency interviewed him, and he said, "Oh, I like it. I get to know the neighborhoods, and um, I get to learn the neighborhoods and see things in fresh air and a lot of exercise." Okay, so much for that. But what about humanism? And that is my question. What happens to humanism? What is the budget for humanism? Do we have any? I mean, can we think of politicians as humanistic? I mean, they claim, a lot of them like to claim that. Can we say that Bernie Sanders is a humanist? No, a politician has to work for the people of his country or his district and so forth. They cannot put the interest of their own people on par with the interest of other human beings around the world. A politician cannot, by default, is not a humanist. And we see it in how Biden turns around and not only he shows that he's an idiot for having made such a bad decision to pull out of Afghanistan like that, but also he shows that he doesn't have a heart. And we're sick and tired of hearing about your dead son, Bo. You've brought it up every 3 months. And if you're going to see parents of fallen soldiers in Kabul, why don't you let a few of them come up and you sit down and be the audience? You sit down and listen to what they say about their kids. Why should they be, again, forced into sitting down and listening to your garbage? Everyone has heard about your, that whole losing your son Bo has been such a boon to your presidency, to your political career. Over and over, you can bring it up and elicit sorrow and sadness and so forth from people. Over and over and over. Even Bernie Sanders, is that guy really a humanist? I mean, somebody like Trump, at least, is honest about it. I'm pretty sure he would never claim that he's a humanist, that to him all. No, of course not. He made it very clear, America first. So if our tax money and the grand policies and the grand budget is going in the hands of a bunch of politicians, what budget are we supposed to guard humanism? Are we supposed to guard rationality on this planet? Individuals cannot do a whole lot. Single individuals cannot do what governments can do. What happens to rationalism? I would say that what happened in Afghanistan was the defeat of stupidity by another form of stupidity. An allegedly rational government that was horribly mismanaged and horribly disintegrated, meaning America, in their policies in Afghanistan, was fighting against another superstitious system that was heavily united. All they had to do, the Taliban, all they had to do was what they did, any of these nomadic societies did in ancient times. Whenever Persians went to war with Scythians, or the Greeks went to war with Bactrians, or a lot of different nomadic societies, these people would just disappear. They were nomads. They would go back to herding shepherds and so forth. They would disappear. It was not an organized army, a solid army together. It was not a paid army, because they, most of the time, as it was the case in much of the ancient world, they were feeding on whatever they could get out of the war, the treats, were raping young women, and taking gold or whatever they could. It was the expeditions were paying for themselves. So the moment you would chase them, the Scythians, for example, they would go back and disappear. They would go back to their nomadic, herding life, and you just had to wait and wait. They would just wait it out until you left, and then all of a sudden they have an army again. And this is what the Taliban did. They ran away, actually miserably. They ran away miserably to Afghanistan. They waited out, and then they came back. This is what the Islamic Republic of Iran did during the Trump era. They just waited it out. They knew that, okay, they were told by John Kerry to just wait out, wait for this Trump era to pass, and then maybe we'll have a treaty again. So they started helping, or showing obvious, very clear, obvious camaraderie with the Taliban, just so that they could have a better footing in their negotiations with the West over the nuclear treaty and so forth. They could go back and remove the embargoes and so forth. But if this withdrawal from Afghanistan had not been this messy, we would never really, a lot of us wouldn't really look into the situation, look at its history to realize that no, every chapter of this thing has been a misery. Every chapter has been a horrible, messy situation. Everything they've done there. And in the meantime, in the 20 years, you had generations of kids that were born and raised and educated in large cities that, um, let me search for this girl, I'll show you, uh, that who got educated, beautiful, beautiful Persians, Afghans. There's this girl who hung out with this ski girl ski champ in Kabul, this Ava girl from Poland, I guess. And she interviews this girl. What a beautiful girl! How athletic! You can see how slender, how beautiful, how oh God! It's just, my heart bleeds seeing such types, such girls being left behind by our troops to be tortured, to be hit, to be assaulted, to be raped, whatever, by the Afghans. I mean, these Afghans clearly talk about. Um, they clearly talk about a lot of Afghan leaders were clearly talking about raping girls, 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds. It's absolutely okay. Anyways, Eva Zubek. Somehow my internet is. Start in yeah, here's this girl. I was so exciting and was so waiting one day I go and join with them. For first time it was so hard for me to do skiing. And really it was hard. But right now I think it is the easiest sport and joyful sport in the world. And I start skiing from Bamiyan also in 2020. You should watch this episode. International competition in Pakistan. Fortunately, I took the third position, and I was the first lady to bring medal for Afghanistan for first time. Yeah, I really highly suggest you watch this. She has 3 episodes there where she goes into Afghanistan. It's amazing, and now you see so many, because the image of Afghan women that we had before was just somebody behind a burqa, covered up from head to toe. You had no idea what it is. What is it under? Now we see that they're human beings just like everybody else, and they can be smart. Their IQs have actually increased over the past 20 years, and there's so much um, improvement. They have a show. They have a some kind of Afghanistan has talent. What is it? Abar Satari. Satari. See, it's a star Satari. All Greek astro. So TV. Did they remove it? I don't know. They had some kind of Afghanistan has talent kind of a competition. It probably is not going to come up, so I'm just going to go to YouTube. You should watch these competitions they had. A lot of boys and girls singing. I was very impressed that in 20 years, these people have gone from a society that uh, didn't have much uh, pop music or anything, to a country that has produced, uh, kids that are singing pretty in tune. They're singing pretty in tune, and you look at them. These people, they don't look that different from anybody else. This girl could be French or Italian or Greek or American. Wow, our internet is so slow today. Afghan star. Okay, so, you look at her. She looks like a Jewish girl from Tarzana, or I don't know, Hollywood or something. I urge you to go and watch these videos. I don't want to take much of your time, and you can hear them in better sound quality and so forth. And I have a lot to talk about, but I think I'm gonna cut it short today. And hope you have a good day. Hope you have a good night. And think about humanism. Think about rationality. Who is supposed to be the proponent of humanity, humanism, and caring for all human beings? We need to come up with a universal set of laws beyond just the Declaration of Human Rights. That because we're all human beings, bottom line, we're all the same race, we're all the same human being. And it's sad that many parts of this planet are impossible to inhabit, and certain parts that are prime land, water, green, beautiful, we've taken over them, and we don't want to let anyone come and share the land with us. This planet is not a friendly planet. Most of it is water. Most of the majority of the surface is water, ice, huge mountains, deserts. This planet barely has just basically provided the environment for human beings to flourish. And it's sad that we put these uh, borders and we limit people from moving. No other animal is so limited that human as human beings are. All right, so much for that. I hope you have a good day and you have a good night.